All right. Well, welcome to episode 1 of our podcast. My name's Cole, and next to me is
Gavin McIntyre.
Yes, and we just took a class at UC Santa Cruz taught by Megan, all about anti-fat bias. Super interesting class. Definitely changed my mind on a lot of things and taught me a lot about this field. And for our final project, we could have written an essay, but we kind of decided to go the podcast route. So you guys are listening to episode 1 of myth busting anti-fat bias. So yeah, I think to understand the myths behind it, we also have to understand first what anti-fat bias is, what it refers to. So Gavin, if you want to get us kicked off with that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Cole. So anti-fat bias is almost a second wave of racism in a way where these people, they're just normal people, but they're looked at as outliers of society and have these negative stereotypes around them, all because of how their body looks, and it doesn't look to the quote-unquote average of society. And these people, yeah, like I said, are stereotyped. They have a negative outlook on them. They're marginalized by society. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting topic, and it's a very, very sad thing when you think about it, because just up until recently, fat bias wasn't really talked about, and it wasn't really talked about in schools, especially where it's seen in more highly concentrated areas and such.
Yeah, exactly. I was literally about to say that. I feel like there's all these other biases that in this more progressive day and age are being talked about more, and I think it's good that there's a conversation starting about anti-fat bias. I think it's one that's really just not talked about enough. But yeah, we're gonna just jump right into our first myth here. And yeah, so let's get that set up right now. Perfect. So first myth on the docket for today. We hear this myth all the time. I think it's the most common myth, hence why we're starting out with it. It's the myth that fat equals unhealthy, which I think is just possibly one of the most absurd things, that I hear. I think it's hard though, like what we've learned in our class is we kind of have to take like a sociological perspective on it rather than being like, hey, you shouldn't think that. It's more like, okay, well, why do they think that? I think a lot of it stems from, how our modern medicine is kept up. I mean, literally the thing that is basing people being fat or not is this whole thing called BMI, or body mass index, which is just a whole bunch of baloney, right? We learned in our class the BMI was created back in the early 1900s, and it was based on the body mass index of white European soldiers. So I mean, is that practical for everybody else that is living in the world? No. Yet it's still used every day. I mean, I remember in middle school, I went into the doctor, and the doctor, oh, your body mass index is labeling you as overweight. And I'm like, I'm 12 years old. How am I overweight? That doesn't make much sense. But yeah, Gavin, I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
Yeah, just to add on to BMI, I remember, I think all 3 years of middle school, 6th through 8th, I remember each year there was a week, PE in middle school was fun. You're playing dodgeball, soccer, things like that. But then there's one unit. You do push-ups, you do pull-ups, you do the pacer test. You'd get based on all of that, your height, your weight. And then they'd show you your BMI. And if your BMI was either too low or too high, they would send it to your parents and say, hey, your child's severely over or underweight, and this needs to be checked out. But the thing with middle schoolers, especially kids, boys and girls who are around 12 to 13, that's the peak of their growth spurt. So their body's going to be a little disproportionate to their weight, because they're going through puberty and all of these things are happening at once. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for BMI to make sense just in general, but in kids that age, because I feel like that's where it's being taught and shown the most because of this part and lesson in PE.
Yeah, and I think also it kind of, the whole thing about labeling people as unhealthy, we read in multiple readings, fat people would go to the doctors and they would say that, their fatness was a cause of their illness or something, when it had really nothing to do with it. And also, I mean, it stems back once again in this big old thing called capitalism coming in. We read in one of our readings by Eric Oliver, there was this whole idea behind the epidemic of obesity, and it almost created this like fear mongering, like, oh, you shouldn't be obese, you shouldn't do all this. And, it opened up dieting culture. And the thing is that once you open that, it opens the door to start making money. So if you tell all these people that they're unhealthy, they need to lose weight, then, you're tricking these people into spending money for all this dieting and everything that doesn't even really work. I mean, you're probably more healthy before just, feeling comfortable in your natural body. I mean, that's the thing. It's just crazy to me that there's all this that happens. And I think that's what we got for the first myth. Let me double check with our notes here. But yeah, I think in general, like Gavin said, it's crazy that, kids are dealing with this stuff. BMI is a whole bunch of baloney. And if that's the thing that determines if someone's healthy or not, I think that's just something that shouldn't even be implemented anymore. But yeah, I think we'll jump into our next myth now. Sweet. So jumping in our next myth today on myth busting, anti-fat bias, we have the myth that promoting body positivity is the solution to anti-fat bias, right? So we see it, all over social media, this whole body positivity movement. And well, I think a lot of people, it is some good in it, I think it also kind of promotes some also not great things. I think like what always comes to mind is you'll see these super, skinny fitness influencers, and then they'll sit down in the chair and they'll show you their belly rolls. And they're like, oh, see, I'm fat too. But then they stand up and they're like literally like shredded. And I just don't think that's like really body positivity. And Gavin, you were saying when people really do post their bodies, like when fat people do post their bodies, what were you saying about that?
Yeah, like an example that's quite prevalent in the age of social media is like fat people posting pictures in bikinis and swimsuits, and the comment sections being filled with one of two things: either comments saying, oh, you're so pretty, or you're so brave, you look so good, and then you have other comments, just hate comments saying like, you shouldn't be wearing that, go back inside, put on some clothes, things like that. And while the first comments also seem like they are positive, in a sense they are, but some of them are also negative, because people shouldn't need to feel like they're taking a risk wearing something they're comfortable in, like a bikini at a beach, when everyone else is wearing that. And just because people's bodies are different doesn't mean that they have to wear something different so that they can fit in. So like by people saying you're so brave for wearing this, in a sense, it's kind of just making them feel more, it's making them think more about their body than they should be thinking. More.
Oh yeah, I totally see what you're saying. And I think like we should kind of like shift the whole thing away from like body positivity and kind of just like shift it to what we've learned in class, which is just body neutrality. So it's kind of saying like body neutrality is like, you know what, like even for myself, some days I look in the mirror and I'm like, wow, like I love what I'm seeing. And some days I don't. And I think that's just, more natural response to how we should be viewing our bodies. It's not like you're supposed to love your body every day. I mean, there might be some days where you don't love your body. And there's also like the thing where it's like, if you want to change your body, change your body. If you want to keep your body the same, keep your body the same. It should be up to you. And I think that if you do change your body, the whole thing about body neutrality is that you should change it because you want to, not because the media influences you, not because, your friends are telling you you should. You should just do it, because you feel like it. And I think that's something that needs to be altered a little bit. And, the body positivity movement does have some good things to it, but overall, I think what we're saying is we want to shift it more to neutrality. But also, I think, Gavin, you were saying something about kind of related to this, is like complimenting people if they like lose weight, right? So I don't know, you were saying something about that.
Yeah, and before we go to that, like something with body neutrality, it's one of those things where it's like, this needs to be something more pushed upon and not forced, but just more talked about, because if you hate your body, if you don't do anything about it, you're going to keep hating your body. But if you love your body too much, and that's all you care about, if something drastic happens to it, or even like the most minute detail happens to it, you're going to be disappointed in yourself. Say that you go to the gym, you're working out, you're gaining muscle, and you have an injury, you break a leg, you break your arm, you get stitches, and that stops you from being able to go to the gym, and you lose all this muscle mass, and you look in the mirror and you're like, wow, like I really lost all my muscle. And that's going to send, either way, it's going to send you into a spiral. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think like kind of going off that is what I've heard a lot of people, a lot of fat people say is like they only get complimented when they lose weight. It's like, I think that we also just should stop complimenting people based on their weight. It's like maybe, that fat person was feeling really depressed about the societal pressure of getting thin, and, they got thin, but they don't feel good about themselves because it's not who they're supposed to be. And you're over here saying, wow, you look so good, when they just went through so much like physical abuse to themselves or mental abuse, even for someone that's skinny, and they get even more skinny. I mean, you have no idea if they're going through an eating disorder or whatever it may be. I think we just need to stop complimenting bodies based on like, oh, wow, you like, oh, you look so good, you lost weight. Like, it's just, I don't know. I don't think weight is something we need to compliment people on. I think we just should compliment, hey, you look really beautiful, rather, or you look very handsome. We don't need to comment, like, weight doesn't need to be associated with attractiveness. It's always, you can't talk about attractiveness without talking about weight and vice versa. And I just don't think that's how it should be.
Yeah, and this also kind of goes back to neutrality, and it should be neutrality in a sense where when people compliment your body, you shouldn't, just like what Cole was saying, like, it shouldn't be, oh, you look so good since you lost all that weight. It should just be like, yeah, you look really good. Because you never know what's really happening inside of them. Like, they could be, like what Cole said, like, they could be depressed, and they could have an eating disorder. They could be like purging themselves because they feel the need that they need to be skinny based on the media and how society looks at them, and family and friends just forcing them to like look like this. Because it could be, you could be like the only fat person in your family, but that's just how your body is, and it's nothing that you can really do about it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Sweet. Well, I think we'll move on to our next myth then. Awesome. So rolling into our next myth here, we have the myth that if you find fat people attractive, then it's a fetish. And I think to kind of kickstart this segment of the podcast, I'd like to share an article by Narjeen and that we read in class. And the quote goes, "We currently have no non-fetishized vocabulary for describing people of whatever size who are attracted to fat bodies, and therefore we lack a conceptual framework for understanding how fat bodies are valued in the context of romantic relationships. Language has the power to shape our world in meaningful, robust ways. Because we don't have the language to describe relationships that involve fat partners, we either laugh or resort to stereotyped notions about fetishism and deviancy when confronted with romantic attraction or desire that does not conform to societal expectations surrounding weight and body type." So a lot to unpack there. I don't know, Gavin, if you wanted to get us started with kind of what you think about that quote or anything that kind of relates to it.
Yeah, so with fat people and finding romantic partners and sexual partners in general, it's already hard because when someone does start going out or start liking a fat person, it's kind of seen almost as treason in a way, because in society it's ingrained in us at such a young age that skinny people are with skinny people and fat people are with fat people, and you kind of match people with body types. And it's really, and to kind of sidetrack off of that, to go off of that, it's really dangerous for fat people, because when they do find a partner that's interested in having sexual relations with them or just wanting to be with them, they're willing to do whatever it is and will stay in this relationship no matter how horrible it is to them, because they know it's going to be hard for them to find someone else that's going to give them the same affection and love, because it's just ingrained in us that we shouldn't date people that are bigger than us.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I think kind of going back on the quote too is that, when we say that, like, when it's like, oh, like, I hear people I know in the past say, oh yeah, he has a fat fetish or something, like I'm like, well, so by you saying that he likes, that's saying that person's body is deviant or it's not normal. And I think that's just a horrible thing to say. I think we need to change how we describe it. If you're attracted to a fat person, it's just like being attracted to a tall person. It's just like being attracted to a short person. It's like being attracted to a person with brunette hair or blonde hair. It's literally just a physical feature. So I think we need to shift it away from calling it a fetish, because this assumes that it's deviant, that it's not normal. And it kind of just dehumanizes fat people, because, they feel like, oh, are you dating me like because you actually find me attractive, or is this like some weird fetish that you have. And I just think that's a horrible thing that people even have to think about when they're going out and dating. And yeah, we'll move into our next myth here. And our next myth is that fat women are represented well and in a good light in media. It's not saying that, fat women or just fat people in general are presented in a good light. And we're going to say that myth is definitely not correct. Definitely a false myth there. I think it's hard to really find a movie, a TV show, an ad where the fat person isn't the comic relief or, isn't the one that everybody is like making fun of, or they're like the sloppy, lazy character or whatever it is. I just think that's you don't see that. I think what's stopping a movie from putting a fat person as the main character? I mean, they literally live their lives just like anybody else. Everybody with every body type has a very unique and different way that they live their lives. I don't know why we can't have a movie showing those lives, because they probably experience the exact same things that thin people do, whatever it is. And I just think I'm kind of tired of seeing that. I would love to see a movie where we have a fat person, or a fat princess, or a fat prince that's getting the beautiful girl, something. And I just don't think they're represented very well. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that.
Gavin. Definitely something that I've noticed. It's kind of like the stereotype that black people are the first people to die in horror movies. It's like whenever you do see a fat person in a movie, TV show, commercial, anything like that, basically on digital media itself, they're always seen as this super funny person, and they're kind of like the clown in the group, and they're not really serious. But also something I've noticed is how in commercials, especially when it regards dieting and things like that, how it's all of a sudden these fat people kind of have a sad tone to them. Especially something something I did notice in the Super Bowl this year, and usually the commercials are all fun and cool, but there's a lot of commercials about Ozempic and all of these fat people that were shown on the commercials. It was kind of like how we have in the notes here, how there's this big transformation where these fat people are sad because they're fat, but then they take Ozempic or they have some crazy workout ritual or something, and then they get all skinny, and then the mood goes from super sad and gloomy, and it goes to all sunshine and rainbows, when it's really not, because they're just pumping themselves full of chemicals, and they know if they stop, it's just this transformation is going to go away, and it's going to go going to go back to fat. And I'll get back to you, Cole.
No, totally. And it's just an unfortunate thing. And when we do see even in ads, when you do see these diversity ads where they include a black person or a Latino or Latinx person, then they'll include a fat person. But is that fat person really fat? Every time I see a quote unquote fat person in these ads or whatever it is, it's always a fat person, but with the curves in the right place. I'm is that even considered fat? I mean, it's not like they're really truly represented. And I just think I wish there's more of that. And also a movie that, oh my gosh, I think is just the stupidest movie is this. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a movie with Jack Black.
Fat Amy.
Yeah, and he thinks that the girl is super skinny and but she's actually fat. People oh, what? It's just I'm why couldn't she be fat? Why couldn't he? Of course there's some dupe or some catch to him being attracted to a fat girl. So that's actually that he thinks she's pretty. I'm that's just the most horrible thing about it. I just don't think that's and another, going back on movies, there's the movie The Whale. I forgot the actor's name, but he wears a fat suit. I'm why can't we just have a fat actor portray that? Why do we have to have all these actors wearing fat suits? Why don't we just show more representation of fat people in media? I don't know what's stopping us from doing that.
Yeah.
But I think that'll do it for that one, and then we'll go ahead and move on to our next one. All right, and then our next myth is that dieting and working out, I don't know, weightlifting, whatever you want to consider working out, is the best way to get healthy. And I just don't think that's true at all. Hence us myth busting. I think dieting, I heard this quote one time, and it was if dieting really worked, then it would no longer be a business, right? Because if dieting actually worked and people were getting skinny or getting fit or getting their dream physique, then they would be out of business. But clearly they're still in business, right? And profiting like crazy. So that clearly means something's not working. And I think what we learned in class is that dieting is just this horrible circle where, you can put off weight through all these like expensive programs. Hence, here's capitalism creeping in again, through all these expensive programs and stuff. But like that weight doesn't stay off. And also like, a lot of people aren't really happy doing that. It's like, oh, nope, actually you can't eat that snack you love to eat. You've hit your calories for the day. And, I just don't think that's like a super healthy way to live. I mean, if that's something you want to do, I mean, go for it. But I think we shouldn't promote it. I don't think it should be the central, idea that everybody should be like grinding in the gym and eating super clean and eating, raw meat, or not raw meat, but eating meat, protein, veggies all the time. Like, I just don't think it's like a realistic way for a lot of people to live, and it doesn't even work. I don't know, Gavin, do you have anything to add?
Kind of back to like the capitalist side of it. Even if dieting was something that worked consistently and it was making people who were fat and who wanted to achieve a skinnier build stay skinny, it would only apply to about 1% of the population, because dieting isn't cheap either. Because if you really wanted to do it, you have to either find a program somehow, which usually costs money. You need a gym membership, because that costs money. You need to buy all of these clean ingredients that Cole's talking about, and those aren't cheap either, because you need to buy all this top line stuff that doesn't have anything in it, quote unquote, harmful to you. And like, I lost my train of thought.
No, you're good. You're good. I mean, I think it's like you're saying. I mean, it's a system where it's meant there to make money, and it's just so mainstream now that it's like, it's not even like, oh, you could do this, or you could just go on your hikes and eat whatever you want. It's like, no, you probably should do this. And I'll just speak from personal experience here too. I'm one of those guys that lifts a lot. I track my calories, but would I like tell everybody that they should be doing what I'm doing? Absolutely not, because it's not realistic for a lot of people. Like, I get it if you don't want to go to the gym 5 days a week. I get it if you just want to go ride your skateboard around town, or go rock climb. Like, there's so many different ways to be healthy. Like, yeah, I'm a guy that like lifts and tracks and stuff, but like, it's so impractical for most amount of people. Like, I'm fortunate enough to have money to pay for all the food I eat. But like, it pains me that that's mainstream, because I know how like impractical it is and hard to maintain that. Like, even myself, I get so sick and tired of doing it sometimes that I'm just like, whatever, I'm going to eat whatever I want, and I don't know. It's just the fact that that's like the only option, the option people should be doing, is just horrible. I don't know if you wanted to wrap it up with something, Gavin.
Yeah, just to kind of go back to like dieting and how it's like seen like by society. It's being so overplayed on social media itself, where there's already skinny people promoting a diet or saying that they're starting a diet, when in reality there's nothing that they need to diet for. And even like Cole, for example, him going to the gym all the time, like, I don't think he sees it as a way that he's losing weight, and that's what his goal, like his end goal is. I think it's a way, like, it's a hobby that he enjoys to do, and it's something, exactly. And it's something that he likes doing, and he knows that he's staying active. And if you don't want to stay active, then don't do it. But some people are different, and I think that people saying that if you go to the gym X amount of times a week that you will lose weight, I think they're just so blinded by the fact that the person that probably told them that is probably someone who's already skinny and didn't start in the gym with a fat body. They started with that, and they're just like, hey, I like this, I'm going to keep doing it, but I'm going to tell people that you can get skinny so I can make an extra buck off of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, I always see these influencers, like, we've talked about this in class a bunch, like, oh, this is what I ate in a day. And it's like all this like super clean food. And like, I bet you like those people aren't eating that all day, every day. Like, there's just no way. But it gives these people a false impression, like that's what they have to do to get skinny. And I just think like specifically fat people are targeted by this whole dieting, with this going back on like when we talked about, the obesity epidemic and, oh, Americans are unhealthy. Like, it's kind of just, then you have mainstream media just telling people they should do it. And I think, like, who's to say a fat person is healthy or not? Like, if they're just staying active and doing whatever makes them happy, then let them be happy. I don't know why we need to say there's only one way to do it. I don't know. It's just so stupid to me. But yeah, I don't know. That'll wrap it up on my end, unless Gavin, you want to add anything?
Yeah, kind of just what Cole just said, just kind of people being active doesn't mean that you're actively trying to lose weight and cut calories.
Exactly.
It's just something that you enjoy doing. It's like if I really wanted to try and lose weight, oh damn, I lost my train of thought again. But
no, you're good.
I think that's it for me, and I think that's it for Cole. And I think we're gonna wrap up our podcast, and we're gonna wrap up episode 1 on kind of just explaining the stereotypes and the myths of anti-fat bias, and also just describing anti-fat bias.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I hope you guys got something out of this. I mean, I think the biggest thing about anti-fat bias is like we said in the beginning, it's just not really being talked about enough. And there's nobody to blame for that. It's just, how it's been, but I think this is the step in the right direction. So we hopefully, if you were having believe some of these myths, which I mean, me and Gavin probably kind of believed too in the beginning, if this helped you out, then we really appreciate it. That was our whole goal, is just to, try to get rid of some of that misinformation and just educate people, because at the end of the day, we're sociologists. Our goal isn't to say, hey, you're wrong, don't think that. It's just to be like, hey, I understand why you think that, but that's why what you think isn't actually the truth. So yeah, I hope you guys all got something out of this. And yeah, episode 2, hopefully soon to come.
Signing out.
Signing out. Thank you guys.
Thank you.